So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions put a very clear emphasis on the quarterbacking position this offseason, right? They went out and they signed Nate Sudfeld in free agency, retained him as the backup quarterback from the Detroit Lions a season ago. They went out and talked with Teddy Bridgewater of potentially bringing him in to be the starting backup quarterback. And then, of course, they went out in the 2023 NFL Draft and they drafted Hendon Hooker in the third round, the quarterback from Tennessee. The quarterback position was very clearly a high priority for the Detroit Lions to address as a backup and future position of need, and I think that they did a very good job of it. However, there is a player that flew under the radar for most of the drafting process. There's a player that the Lions very clearly liked from the beginning, and going back through the offseason now with hindsight, it's very clear the Lions had a lot of interest in this player from the beginning and had their eyes on him throughout the NFL Draft. That player is former Nebraska quarterback Adrian Martinez. Now, Adrian Martinez is a player that the Lions brought in for a top 30 visit. They interviewed multiple times at bowl games, and they were just very much in contact with him for a large majority of the offseason. Now, Adrian Martinez is a player that at one point in his career was looked at as a potential future first-round pick, a player that is immensely talented at the quarterbacking position, but was just never quite able to put everything together, was never quite able to get everything right, to hone his skills, to, polish up his game and become the elite quarterback that he looks to be on paper. However, the Lions very clearly see something in him. As I said, a top 30 visit throughout the offseason and a player that was signed almost immediately after the 2023 draft came to a close. I think Adrian Martinez is more talented than several quarterbacks that were drafted in this class, and I think he has the potential to not only make the roster as the final quarterback, but potentially play a role as a developmental quarterback and a future backup to boot. So with that being said, let's get right on into taking a look at Adrian Martinez and really taking a look at what he does as a quarterback. Now, Adrian Martinez, as I said, is an immensely talented quarterback. Spent 4 years at the collegiate level, completing 63.6% of his passes, throwing for 9,752 yards, 52 touchdowns to 31 interceptions. Now, the coaching staff at Nebraska was never an elite one for Adrian Martinez. I don't think they ever really helped him reach the ceiling that he's capable of reaching. And once he went to Kansas State, he did transfer after 3 years at Nebraska. He had a 6-to-1 touchdown ratio and didn't quite finish the season due to an injury, but looked really efficient while he was at Kansas State. Now, Adrian Martinez is not just a quarterback. He is a dynamic and truly elite athlete. Throughout his time in college, he had 619 rushing attempts for 2,928 yards and 45 touchdowns, bringing his touchdown total to 96 throughout his college career. Almost 100 scrimmage touchdowns from Adrian Martinez throughout his career at Kansas State as well as Nebraska, and he is an elite athlete. He is a top-tier athlete at the quarterbacking position, and on paper, this kid looks like he would be a great starting quarterback in the NFL. He has the arm talent, he has the rushing ability, he has all the physical tools and physical gifts you could ever ask for in a starting quarterback, but the mental side of the game just never really clicked for him, whether it be the coaching staff, whether it be the schemes, whether it be the talent around him. Something always seemed to drag Adrian Martinez down and keep him from reaching the elite ceiling that he potentially had. Now, I do want to mention that Adrian Martinez, despite being one of the more notorious busts of college football, right? A player that never quite lived up to his full potential. I do want to mention that he holds 17 records at Nebraska for passing records and quarterback records, as well as being awarded and mentioned and being a finalist in dozens of accolades and awards. I mean, you go through the things he's been nominated for, you go through the things that he's been a finalist for. And it is a full page, a full read of all the different things, all the different awards he's been in the race for, all the different things he's been competing for. And even though he never won a major award like the Heisman or the O'Brien or the Maxwell Award, he's been a finalist. He's been on the watch list for those awards year after year after year. And as I said, holds dozens of Nebraska quarterbacking records, despite not necessarily helping Nebraska reach the heights that they wanted to reach with him. Now, the quarterbacking depth with the Detroit Lions is obviously very deep, right? Jared Goff is your undisputed starter going into the season, coming off a top 10 quarterback season a year ago in the NFL and looking to improve upon that with with added weapons like Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta, as well as the returning right guard of Halapaloe Vaitai. The Lions offense was top 5 a season ago, led by Jared Goff, and the Lions are going to look to improve upon that. Jared Goff had a phenomenal year last year. The offensive coordinator returned. All the offensive weapons returned. You get upgrades at the tight end position, the offensive line, and the running back positions. And the sky is the limit for Jared Goff in this offense. There's no doubt that he is going to be the quarterback one of this team. Knock on wood that injuries were to occur. Now, Hendon Hooker was the third-round selection of the Detroit Lions, a player that they very clearly liked out of Tennessee, but has a lot of red flags as a prospect. The Tennessee offense didn't really prepare him for the NFL, and of course, the ACL tear leaves the timeline up in the air of whether or not Hendon Hooker is going to be ready for the start of the preseason, whether he's going to be ready for the start of the season, or whether he's going to start 2023 on the PUP list and not be an active member of the final roster. I think Hendon Hooker is very clearly in the future plans of the Detroit Lions and will be one of the most elite backup quarterbacks in the NFL to start, with a potential to join the starting ranks eventually, but he may not be on the starting roster to start 2023, as he may be put on the IR or physically unable to perform list for the entirety of his rookie year. Now, Nate Sudfeld, of course, was re-signed through free agency, was a free agent for the Detroit Lions after signing him last year at the end of the preseason. He knows the offense, he knows what's going on, but has never really been a quality backup quarterback in the NFL. Has been the third string quarterback on the Eagles, has kind of been around the NFL a little bit. And although he's been a solid backup, a solid third string quarterback, he's never really been the guy that you look at and you go, that's an elite quarterback, right? That's a guy you can throw in a game and win football games with. Best case scenario is what happened last year, right? Nate Sudfeld got on the field, had 3 or 4 handoffs during the season, and that's really all we saw out of number 10 in the 2022 season, which I think leaves the door open for a player like Adrian Martinez, a player that is the best athlete in the quarterback room right now. I would say has more arm talent than Nate Sudfeld and is just a better overall football player than Nate Sudfeld. I think Adrian Martinez, despite again not being the player that hit his ceiling in college, is a player that could hit his ceiling in the NFL with better coaches, with a better offensive coordinator, and a really good young offensive mind in Ben Johnson. I think they might have a plan for Adrian Martinez. I don't think that they're interested in Adrian Martinez throughout this whole process and don't have a plan on how to use him. I wouldn't be surprised if he beats out Nate Sudfeld for the third string quarterback job and stays as the third quarterback on the Detroit Lions roster. And then when Hendon Hooker isn't healthy, let's say he's not healthy to start the season, if Adrian Martinez is the backup quarterback going into week 1 versus Kansas City, and if they even use him in week 1 versus Kansas City, I think that he has really good rushing ability, and I think they could use him in a very similar way that the Baltimore Ravens used Lamar Jackson in his rookie season, a very similar way to how Justin Fields was used in his rookie season, right? Not a lot, not a ton, but maybe in goal line packages where you want to add an extra dynamic runner, maybe on 3rd and 1 situations where you need a dynamic runner and you want to run the football with your quarterback. Adrian Martinez could maybe take 5-10 carries a season in his rookie year and be a guy that picks up extra yardage, be a guy that just has a change of pace on the offensive side of the ball and have, that wildcat element, right? What Michigan did with J.J. McCarthy in his freshman season, where, yeah, he's going to run the football 9 times out of 10, but you have to be prepared for the deep shot. You have to be prepared for any passing thing because Adrian Martinez is still a really good quarterback. Now, taking a look at the overall grade, I think that he is going to get a B overall grade, right? UDFAs are really hard to grade. They're really hard to scale because if they end up making the 53, I think it warrants at least a B. But if they don't end up making the roster at all, it's really an F because they are not even good enough to make the roster. So I think Adrian Martinez right now is at a B. I think he'll be the quarterback 3 or 4 on this roster, right? The Lions will carry 3 quarterbacks into the season, and I think Adrian Martinez will be quarterback 3 of 3. And if Hendon Hooker is not healthy, will be quarterback number 2. I think he has a really good chance of making the final 53 and has a really good chance of potentially having a wrinkle in this offense. Now, again, Adrian Martinez is a high ceiling player. He's a high upside player. He's a player that has always looked really good on paper, but has never really showed the ceiling, never touched the ceiling that he showed the ability of reaching. I think Kansas State was putting him on a really good trajectory and a really efficient schedule, which helped him look like a much more complete quarterback before injuries eventually came about. I think that they could potentially look at Adrian Martinez as a potential Jalen Hurts-esque arc, a potential, sit him for a couple years and maybe have a competition between Hendon Hooker and Adrian Martinez. I think that they're both really solid athletes. They're both really good football players, but I think Adrian Martinez genuinely has a higher ceiling than Hendon Hooker at this point in time, just based off the athletic traits and based off the athleticism. So with that being said, this is a quarterback that nobody's talking about, a quarterback that nobody knows the name of, quarterback that nobody's giving a chance on the roster, and yet this could be a quarterback that's taking snaps for the Detroit Lions in week 1 of the NFL regular season. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about Adrian Martinez. Do you think he could potentially make the roster? Do you think he could potentially be a quarterback of the future, a developmental backup, or even a potential developmental guy that gets snaps eventually, that becomes the starting quarterback and reaches his ceiling as a NFL caliber QB? I'd be very curious what you guys have to say. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions!